Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News. It's Friday, November 14th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with the latest suspension on the nation's second largest carrier, Asiana Airlines. The company will not be able to fly its Incheon-San Francisco route for some time as part of its punishment for the fatal landing crash last year in the U.S. Shin Se-min has our top story.
Asiana Airlines has been barred from operating its Incheon to San Francisco route for 45 days, a decision by the nation's transport ministry that comes as a consequence of the fatal crash of one of its planes at San Francisco International Airport in July of last year. The decision was based on the civil aeronautics law as well as the loss of life and property that came as a result of the accident. The nation's second largest airline is expected to lose over $13.5 million from the suspension. Currently, Asiana operates the route once a day using a Boeing 777 with 295 seats. The airline now has 10 days to formally appeal the decision. The suspension is expected to go into effect in roughly 3 months for the convenience of passengers who had already booked their tickets for that route. The decision is separate from the earlier penalty of $500,000 issued to the airline by U.S. federal transportation officials for failing to assist the families of the passengers on the flight. Earlier this year, the National Transportation Safety Board concluded that pilot error and an over-reliance on automated systems was to blame for the crash, which left 3 passengers dead and more than 180 injured. Adding that the Boeing 777 came in too low and too slow, U.S. regulators said the trainee pilot lacked sufficient training and inadvertently shut off an automated speed control system that might have prevented the accident. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye is now in Australia for this year's G20 summit. Before arriving, she was in Myanmar to attend a couple of regional forums, and that's where she talked about the possibility of holding a trilateral summit with the leaders of China and Japan. Choi Yoo-sun files this report from Brisbane.
At an annual meeting with the leaders of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, China and Japan, hosted by Myanmar this year, President Park Geun-hye has openly expressed hopes to meet her Chinese and Japanese counterparts. This comes as historical and territorial differences in Northeast Asia have led tensions to rise in the region. The last time the 3 countries' leaders met was in 2012. A slight gaining of diplomatic momentum among the 3 nations was witnessed at the APEC summit in Beijing earlier this week, when President Park talked about a tripartite foreign ministers meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Although nothing has been fixed, Korea's presidential office says it hopes to arrange the top diplomats gathering sometime before or after the end of next month.
We will be able to talk about when and how we can hold a leaders' summit, depending on the outcome of the foreign ministers' meeting.
Park also had a brief encounter with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, where the 2 leaders agreed to encourage officials involved in high-level talks to make progress in resolving Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. It, however, remains to be seen how the latest rounds of diplomacy and reconciliatory gestures will work to thaw Korea's relations with Japan, as Seoul is adamant Tokyo must first take responsibility for its past wrongdoings. President Park has touched down in the Australian city of Brisbane, where she will join leaders of the Group of 20 Nations to seek an action plan to achieve a collective economic growth of 2% above trend in 5 years. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Brisbane.
North Korea says it will send its senior Communist Party official Choi Ryong-hae to Russia as leader Kim Jong-un's special envoy. Pyongyang's state media reported this Friday that Choi, who is widely seen as the second in command in the north, will visit Russia. It, however, did not specify the timing of the trip, saying only that it will happen in the near future. Insiders say Choi will likely meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss their bilateral ties sometime next week. Now, the move comes amid signs that cooperative relations between the two countries have been growing through recent high-level meetings. Now, the UN envoy on North Korea human rights has once again called on referring the regime's leader to the International Criminal Court. This comes as the UN General Assembly is expected to vote on a resolution on the human rights situation in Pyongyang. Hwang Sung-hee has more.
UN Special Rapporteur on North Korean human rights Marzuki Darusman reiterated that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un should be taken to the International Criminal Court for his serious human rights violations.
It's only now that we are now in a position to, in fact, direct culpability on the supreme leader for these massive human rights violations.
At a forum in Seoul on Thursday, the UN envoy said the report published by the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea pointed unequivocally to the North Korean leadership for being responsible for the inhumane treatment of its 25 million population. Noting Pyongyang's recent invitation to Darusman, U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues Robert King said the report is effective in slowly changing the North.
He's been denied visits to North Korea for 4.5 years. The North Koreans indicate that they're willing to invite him to Pyongyang as long as the text of the resolution is modified. I think these are all very clear indications of North Korean concerns about the focus on their human rights record.
As the UN General Assembly prepares to vote on the human rights resolution in mid-December, the two human rights figures agreed on adding more pressure on the regime. Both Darusman and King agreed that the next crucial step would be to link the North Korean human rights issue with security dimensions by listing it in the agenda of the UN Security Council. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
In exactly 10 days, the Korean military will hold defense drills on and around Korea's Dokdo Island in the East Sea. Now, it's a regular exercise which has been taking place twice a year since 1986 amid Japan's ongoing territorial claims to the island. Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
The South Korean military is scheduled to conduct a defense drill aimed at deterring trespassers on its easternmost island of Dokdo later this month. A government source said Friday that the drill is scheduled to take place on November 24th, and the goal will be to repel non-military forces that approach the island via sea or air. The Korean Navy will employ 5 to 6 destroyers and convoys, as well as some patrol planes and fighter jets. The official says the Marine Corps will simultaneously conduct a landing exercise on Dokdo using a UH-60 helicopter. The exercise has been carried out twice a year since 1986, and the latest drill took place in May. Experts say the exercise is carried out to prevent Japanese forces from landing on the island. Japan claims that Dokdo is part of its territory, though it never established its sovereignty over the island. Seoul reclaimed sovereignty over its territory, including Dokdo and other islands around Korea, upon its independence from Japan's colonial rule from 1910 to 1945. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Samsung SDS, the tech services unit of Korea's biggest conglomerate, made its debut on the Korean stock market this Friday. It had a very strong start with share prices more than doubling the initial public offering price, but closed after slipping a bit at under $300. Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
Shares of Samsung SDS, the group's IT services affiliate that specializes in system integration, closed its first day trading at around $298 on Friday. That's almost 14% lower than its initial offering price of roughly $345, making SDS the fifth largest company in Korea in terms of market capitalization when the market opened. At the end of the day, the company had become the sixth most valued company in Korea. The hype surrounding the company's IPO reflects high expectations the Samsung affiliate will be increasingly utilized as the group undergoes structural changes since its chairman Lee Gun-hee was hospitalized in May following a serious heart attack. The three heirs of the Lee Gun-hee family fortune own a combined 19% stake in Samsung SDS. An Jae-min, an analyst for Seoul-based Kium Securities, says the heirs are expected to sell off their shares in Samsung SDS to pay their inheritance taxes. The analyst adds the future of the company looks bright, mainly due to its distribution business, and expects the share price to rise well past $400 even after the hype dies down. Samsung Group's other affiliate, Tail Industries, is also going public later this year, raising the country's IPO volume to a three-year high to more than $2.7 billion. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
China is one of the few economies recording more than 5% annual growth, but that may no longer be the case in the near future. The U.S. Research Institute, the conference board, predicts Beijing's economic growth will be in the 3% range 5 years from now. At a press conference in New York on Thursday, the institute said it expects the Chinese economy to experience a soft fall over the next decade. Unlike a soft landing, which means economic stabilization after a recession, a soft fall means economic momentum will continue to deteriorate, in this case due to China's transition from an export-driven economy to one that focuses more on boosting domestic demand. It says China's economic growth will begin to slow starting next year, falling to 6.5% from this year's 7% plus growth. Now, to tackle the problem of fine dust particles in Northeast Asian region, Korea, China, and Japan have decided to jointly strengthen measures on the matter. Heads of the three nations' environmental research institutes are meeting in Japan, where they saw eye to eye on the need to come up with a new means to control yellow dust and general air pollution. During the five-day meeting, which will wrap up on Saturday, Korea has also shared its policies on bird flu and environmental radioactivity. To continue this trilateral cooperation, representatives will meet again next year in Korea's southern city of Yeosu. Major companies like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor reported some disappointing third-quarter earnings, and the outlook for the fourth quarter remains bleak as well. According to data compiled by market researcher FN Guide, the combined operating profit of 168 listed Korean companies in the fourth quarter is estimated at around $25 billion as of Thursday. Now, that's down some 11% from an estimate 3 months ago. The dimmer outlook comes as local companies are going through tough times with the weak Japanese yen, slowing Chinese and Eurozone economies, and sluggish domestic demand. There are many industries benefiting from the popularity of the Korean wave, and one such sector is Korea's cosmetics market. Statistics Korea says sales have grown to more than $3.6 billion in the third quarter of this year, an increase of more than 10% on year. Now, experts say the sales surge can largely be attributed to Chinese buyers, with the popularity of Korean dramas leading to greater interest in Korean makeup products. Analysts, however, say Korean consumers are spending less on cosmetics and seeking more affordable, high-quality products. The Korean cosmetics market is expected to reach $14.6 billion this year.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
24 hours have passed since the robotic lander from the European Space Agency's Rosetta mission successfully touched down on a speeding comet. The probe is said to be in a stable condition and is sending images back to Earth fine, but scientists fear that the batteries could go out soon. Kim Young-gil reports.
The Philae space probe that made history by touching down on a comet 500 million kilometers from Earth has achieved another remarkable first by sending back stunning images of the comet's surface. One of the photos released by the European Space Agency shows one of the lander's legs on the jagged, rocky surface of the comet. The agency thinks the lander could be resting on its side, possibly with one leg extended into open space, and concerns are rising about the probe's battery life. Philae appears to be sitting under the shadow of a huge crater wall, so scientists may have a hard time recharging its solar batteries. Scientists had been hoping for 6 to 7 hours of sunlight to charge the batteries, but it looks like Philae will only get a maximum of 2 hours of illumination during every 12-hour rotation of the comet. Under the current circumstances, Philae may cease to operate beyond Saturday. Engineers are thinking of repositioning the probe to maximize the lander's exposure to sunlight. Regardless of what happens in the coming days, the mission's priority will be on collecting as much information as possible from the comet. Researchers hope to pull up some subsurface material for laboratory analysis. Scientists believe comets delivered water to planets and may hold some answers to the origins of life and the formation of the solar system. Philae has a Twitter account with all the latest images from the comet's surface. Users can check them out by following @Philae2014. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
In other international news, Liberia has ended its national state of emergency in terms of the Ebola epidemic. While noting that the fight against the deadly virus is not over, the country's president said Liberia has come a long way since August, when it became the outbreak's epicenter, and that the government had determined that there has been enough progress to lift the emergency measure. Meanwhile, the international humanitarian organization Doctors Without Borders has agreed to partner with researchers in Europe to test 2 experimental drugs and 1 convalescent plasma treatment at its clinics in West Africa. The trials will involve 400 people with early results expected in February. So far, there is no vaccine for the Ebola virus, which has now killed more than 5,000 people in West Africa since early this year. Moscow and Kiev are exchanging barbs, with each saying the other violated a September ceasefire. This as NATO accuses Russia of sending military equipment and troops into rebel-held eastern Ukraine. Now, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe said it spied a vehicle marked Cargo 200 among the clusters of Russian tanks, artillery, and air defense systems entering Ukraine, and that is apparently a vehicle used to transport soldiers' bodies. The United Nations Security Council also convened an emergency session on Ukraine on Thursday on concerns that full-scale fighting could break out in the country's east. The world governing body of football is at the center of attention again over the highly questionable winning bids for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup. As soon as a FIFA ethics report cleared Russia and Qatar of corruption allegations, the man behind the independent investigation labeled the report as false. Connie Lee tells us more.
These latest developments are a farce, even by FIFA standards.
The head of an independent investigation into alleged World Cup corruption says FIFA's summary of his report is flat out wrong. The report, published Thursday morning, cleared Russia and Qatar of any significant wrongdoings in their winning bids for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. Just hours after the report was published, Michael Garcia, the man who spent 2 years on the investigation, branded the report erroneous and said he would appeal to FIFA. The head of the English Football Association told reporters that he thinks the FIFA report is a joke.
It has made a bit of a mockery of the whole process. If the person who did the investigation says the report didn't reflect what he believed, I'm a bit shocked by it all. I think it's now pretty ugly for FIFA.
The FIFA report criticized England over its bid to host the 2018 World Cup, accusing it of disregarding the rules. The head of England's bid believes the entire ethics report could be questioned.
The process was flawed from the beginning in our view, and it didn't have the confidence that it should have done.
Russia won the right to host the 2018 Games, beating England. However, suspicions have been piqued ever since Qatar, the 2022 World Cup host, was accused of paying bribes to FIFA officials in return for winning the hosting rights. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
A new ranking for national brands is out, and Germany has overtaken the United States to have the best national brand. That's according to German market research firm GfK. Germany's high scores were driven by its victory at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. After having claimed the top spot since 2009, the U.S. now sits in second place, followed by Britain and France. The index measures the brand image of 50 countries in 6 categories, namely exports, governance, culture, people, tourism, and immigration and investment. Now, more than 20,000 people in 20 countries were polled for this year's survey. And in case you are wondering where Korea stands, it was placed at 27th on the list. In the news of culture, Korea's largest art fair devoted to introducing limited edition artwork opened on Thursday. The art comes from far and wide and is not limited to works by Korean artists. Here's our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won, who took a look around for us.
Ranging from photos and woodcut prints to 3D computer artwork, this fair is all about art pieces that have a limited number of editions. Since 1995, the annual International Art Fair has invited a number of participants and guests from all over the world. This year's includes 51 galleries from 15 countries. Those who visit will get close access to the artists themselves and exhibit booths.
My works are about the endless networks of our lives that interconnect everyone. It looks like a plant, as plants represent the circles of life, from its creation to extinction.
In this project, I did a performance in a site near the Auschwitz camp where people were shot. And I asked the audience, there were about 300 people, I asked them to write down the names of the people they love and put them in candles, and the candles went down the river to the ocean. So it became this kind of celebration of life.
On the sidelines of the festival, diverse programs are being offered, from artist talks and collaborative projects to printmaking classes. The festival continues until this Sunday at the Hangaram Art Museum of Seoul Arts Center. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
TGIF everyone, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the latest weather forecast. It seems like winter is already here. Earlier today, the first snow of the season fell here in Seoul. For those of you making plans for the weekend, here are 2 suggestions for events to check out. First, the Seoul Lantern Festival is taking place along the Cheonggyecheon stream in the central part of Seoul, and the beautiful lanterns are definitely worth checking out. Also, the LED Rose Festival will be held through November 30th at Dongdaemun Design Plaza, where you'll be able to enjoy roses lit up amid the darkness. Getting back to the weather, we have conditions similar to today in store for us over the weekend. Temperatures will drop below 0 in the morning before reaching up to the low teens. Otherwise, showers should fall nationwide on Sunday evening through Monday. At the moment, we have mostly clear skies, but Jeju is seeing some rain, and the brisk and chilly autumn conditions will continue throughout the day in most regions. Also, a dry weather advisory is in effect for regions along the eastern coast due to cold and dry air sweeping in, so make sure to stay hydrated. On to the ratings. Seoul reaches 10, Daegu that is, tops out at 11, Gwangju and Busan at 12. As for other regions, Daejeon hits 10, Jeju 13, Mount Kumgang peaks at 8. That's all the updates I have for you now. Hope you have a wonderful Friday evening. Here's a look at the international weather.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. I'll be back at 6 p.m. Korea time.